Good morning, everybody. My name is Gene Coltas, presiding member for this meeting. Under the agenda, Part A, on item 1, I'll open the meeting, declare it open and acknowledge traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed in accordance with Regulation 40.2A. Item 2 on the agenda, Part A, Councillor Aaron Bowman has noted his apology from the meeting. Item 3, members on leave of absence, there are none. Item 4, noting of the minutes of previous meetings, they're all available on the MODAP website. I move on to Part B of the agenda. Panel members are noted. Item 1, declaration of due consideration. Can all panel members note or signify that they've considered all documentation within Part B of the agenda and related information, and in particular item the R13 direction that was published on the 15th of May. Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. There are none. Note that there is a standing declaration for local government members who may have considered this item during their local government works. Item 3, we have development applications. Item 3.1, Central Avenue, Hazelmere, the proposed warehouse and incidental offices. In regard to that, we have a presenter, Mr. Jared Ross from Taylor Burrell Barnett. Mr. Ross, would you like to step up to the lectern or sit down in the chair and make your presentation? We'll be asking questions of you in due course. Yes. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, presiding member. Thank you, panel members, for having me. My name is Jared Ross. I'm a principal with Taylor Burrell Barnett. With me today is Deborah Burrows from Indev Proprietary Limited. We are representing the applicant for item 8.1. The proposal before you is a relatively straightforward development. It's a 20,000 square metre warehouse divided into 4 tenancies, each with its individual office. Shared parking areas and crossovers, hard stand, landscaping and drainage consistent with the city standards. The officers have provided a recommendation for approval subject to a number of conditions, which we are supportive of, subject to modification to some of those conditions. First condition is condition 4. This stipulates a maximum number of staff members and visitors permitted on the site at any one time and reflects the variation that we are seeking to the city's parking standards. The variation is significant against the parking standards, but it's actually quite commonly applied to warehouse developments because they don't generate a large number of employees. Whilst the condition is something that the city applies as a standard approach in these situations, in our view, it's not actually a practical approach to managing car parking on site. We don't see a situation where the city is going to be counting the number of staff members in any of these warehouses, and it's very difficult for the tenants to manage as well. So what we have proposed is an alternative condition which stipulates that parking must occur within the 122 designated car parking bays and not elsewhere on site or within the city's verge. We believe that's a much more implementable condition from the city's perspective and from the proponent's perspective. This is a condition that has been applied in other local governments successfully, and we believe it's appropriate in this situation. Second relates to condition 13, the sustainability strategy. So I wanted to start by making clear that the architect has kept sustainability front of mind in this design and has presented to the design review panel twice and have incorporated a number of sustainability attributes as part of the design and was commended for that by the design review panel. The proposal for a sustainability strategy is not a statutory requirement or a policy requirement under the City of Swan planning framework. It was simply a suggestion by the design review panel and one that we don't believe is necessary or required. It's unclear to us how a sustainability strategy would even be assessed by the city, given they don't have a planning framework to be able to assess the merits of that against. So we believe that this condition doesn't have any merit and we would like it to be deleted. Condition 14 is just simply a modification of the text. We accept that the BMP is required to be implemented. We just want to make clear that there are 2 implementation measures in that BMP. Condition 16 relates to hazardous materials. We don't believe that this condition has sufficient certainty or a sufficient justification from a planning perspective to be applied. Hazardous is a very broad term. Sheet metal, glass, WD-40, cleaning products could all be considered hazardous. To suggest that we can't store any of those in a warehouse to us is unreasonable. More to the point, the city's framework doesn't restrict the storage of hazardous materials within warehouse developments. These matters, based on their quantity, are already governed by the EPA regulations and may fall within a separate land use if we are to store significant quantities of genuinely hazardous materials. But that is a matter that will be dealt with by a different land use classification and different planning approval framework or separate approvals outside of the Planning and Development Act. So we don't believe that we consider this condition to be far too vague and should be deleted because it doesn't have any actual purpose. Condition 17, we're simply objecting here to the specification of species. As part of this, we have provided a landscape concept plan as part of the development application process. We accept the ones required to be submitted thereafter. We just object to being specified species being dictated via the condition. The proposal should be considered on its merits as part of that condition. Condition 18 appears to just be an error. The first sentence doesn't seem to have anything to do with the remainder of the condition, so we've suggested that that be deleted. Condition 19 is, in our view, an advice note. The restricted access vehicle network is prescribed by Main Roads. We are aware of the restrictions as to vehicles we can and can't accept on site. It doesn't need to be a condition. Condition 21 and 22 are, frankly, just a little bit confusing. So condition 20 outlines that we are required to submit an ATU apparatus application to the required standards of the City of Swan and the Department of Health. And as part of that, we are required to comply with the government sewerage policy. We're aware of that. It's an existing requirement. We know that that's the case. Condition 21 makes suggestions that we're required to connect to scheme water to be in accordance with the government sewerage policy, or at least implies that. Government sewerage policy doesn't deal with scheme water connections. We know we're required to connect to scheme water, so the condition isn't required. 22 suggests that a secondary on-site wastewater treatment is required because it's in a proposed sewage sensitive area. That's not actually the case. It's required because there is no reticulated sewer in Hazelmere. It's also a sewage sensitive area, so we are required to address that as part of our application. But we're aware of that requirement. The requirement is already in condition 20. We don't believe that this condition is necessary. With that, I'll close. I don't know that I stuck to the 3 minutes, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll ask, I'll open it up for questions of panel members. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Thank you. Panel members, yes, Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. What's the actual landscaping area of the site? What's the percentage of the total site?
I don't actually know that answer. Give me one moment, I'll find out.
Yeah, it's not in your report.
It's not listed in the city's report.
Does the city have an answer to that, if they're able to quickly answer that?
15.7% of the site based on the concept landscaping plan.
15%. Where does it say that? Doesn't say that in the report, does it?
It's on the landscaping plan, which I believe is an attachment to the report.
Oh, okay, 15%.
Annotation to the bottom area. That says
so does that include? Sorry, does that include the car park?
It includes all landscaped areas, so the portions of the car park that are landscaped, it would include.
Yeah, it doesn't include the car park itself.
No.
Okay. So the other thing is the design review panel had quite a few comments to make, and the ones I thought were, most important were about the shade and shelter. Did you manage to address any of those in your after they gave their report to you?
Yes, We did in the revised design. So as part of the alfresco areas for the office component, we revised the landscaping within those areas to provide additional
What did you do?
landscape and modification in species.
What did you do?
So we revised the landscape.
Yeah, and what did you actually do in detail? Just what were the details that you changed? Sorry, I can't hear.
The landscape ensured that there was greater coverage, and I believe we proposed
Sorry?
shade sails.
What is it? What was the modification that you made after they gave their report?
Sorry, so we provided shade sails as part of the alfresco
Oh,
areas.
shade sails. Okay. Oh, shade sails. Okay.
And
No.
modified the species to ensure.
Okay. What was the modification to the species that you did?
I'm not aware of this, the specific species. I'm sorry.
Right.
Trees,
Okay.
greater canopy cover through the trees.
Yeah. How many trees are you proposing to put in? Doesn't say in your report. That I could see. Sorry. Oh, maybe it is, but I missed it. How many trees are you planning to put in? Thank you.
Check. It appears to be approximately 65 based on the landscaping plan.
I don't think that can be correct. There'd be no way that you'd be able to fit in 65 trees in there. I mean, it's bushes or shrubs that you're talking about?
Proposed medium trees 40, proposed small trees 25.
Small trees 25. Medium trees, what would they be?
It's
Yeah.
outlined within the landscaping plan. So weeping peppermint and red flowering gums.
Weeping peppermint.
As well.
The red flowering gums. What happened to the because in the condition of approval there's the species which is Corymbia calophylla, which are marries. You haven't got any provision for those in your landscaping report?
Not at this point in time, no. Not in our concept landscaping plan.
No. And why would that be?
I'd have to take the question on notice. Sorry, I'm not the landscape architect.
Oh, okay. All right then. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my client may have an answer to that. Deborah, did you?
We weren't. Yeah. Sorry, we weren't aware of until we received that condition. We weren't aware that anyone at the city required one specific species. We'd chosen the species from the species list of trees prior to that. So we weren't aware until that condition was in place.
Okay. So are you the landscaping, are you the person that dealt with the landscaping?
No, sorry. Deborah Burrows is the development manager. The landscape
architect
is not in attendance.
So, well, the last question is, how many large trees can you fit on the site?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that.
Large trees, large trees with canopy cover.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. We've provided a landscaping plan that outlines the extent of trees that we're proposing.
Yeah. 15% of the site is how many square meters? Sorry, because I mean I don't understand how you get 40 trees in there. It just seems doesn't seem plausible to me. Large trees I'm talking about with canopy cover. That's the bit I don't quite understand. So I'm just curious how that actually works.
Based on the landscaping plan, there's 7,740 square meters.
7,140.
Councillor Catalano, may I draw your attention to the time to answer these questions? We're not here to design the landscaping. I think he has addressed your questions. So rather than get into the detail, I think the landscaping plan has shown a certain compliance with requirements. I note that the conditions asking for certain types of trees is there. If we decide to specify that, then in accordance with, or in conjunction with council staff, their landscaping staff, they'll require certain number of trees, but we'll have to be specific if we're going to nominate other trees on the plan, but we're not here to design it. So could we just get to the nub of your question, please?
No, well, that's okay. That was my last question, as I did actually originally say.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. I think what we can do is address the species in our discussion. Any other questions? Yes, Nima?
Yeah, thank you. In the design review panel, they reviewed the first time you made the submission, and then it came back and you made modifications, then it got reviewed the second time. When I looked at the second one, my concern was on the safety. There was a red flag on it, and one of the concerns they did was the potential conflict between trucks and pedestrians, getting in the way. And you can see from the design there is a potential of that. How has the developer addressed that?
So we updated our transport impact assessment to.
Sorry, Jared, could you speak up a little bit, please?
Apologies. We updated our transport impact assessment to reflect the safety considerations and the management that will be undertaken by the tenants as part of that. The city undertook a review of that and confirmed that they were satisfied that there were no safety implications, that the crossing points for pedestrians from the car park through to the offices and warehouse were sufficiently visible, and that there were measures in place, that there were sufficient sight lines for truck movements and the like to be able to ensure employee safety.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of panel members? Mr. Birch.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the sustainability strategy, you mentioned that that's was uppermost in the minds of the designers. Is that documented that you could offer to the city to show what?
Yes, we did that. So Marsha presented to the design review panel twice. Marsha is our architect. They presented to the design review panel twice. They outlined the extent of sustainability measures that they were looking to including recycled asphalt, installation of photovoltaic cells for on-site power generation, ridge vents for the purpose of passive ventilation of the building. They were outlining them as voluntary measures because there isn't any requirement for us to align with those measures. There is a voluntary system of providing sustainability as part of the design. The design review panel commended us on those aspects and suggested that it might be further refined through a sustainability strategy.
Are you aware of the council's pro forma or policy on sustainability strategies? Is there a document that says this is how you prepare them, this is what you've got to address?
I'm not aware of any framework for sustainability strategies that the city has.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further questions?
Okay, we'll go to the...
Yeah, we can go to the council. All right, if there's no further questions of the presenter, perhaps we can go to council staff. Is there any questions of panel members of the staff? Councillor Catalano, do you have any questions of the staff in regard to?
Yes. Yes, thanks. Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Who am I addressing? Is that Phil Russell? Mr. Russell?
Rebecca Lodge, Councillor Catalano will field your questions.
Okay, Rebecca. So I'm just interested in how many, because I noticed that in the conditions you've got Corymbia calophylla. How many trees do you think can fit on that site in the sort of green spaces?
We didn't bed down into the particulars. We actually moved the landscape plan into supplementary information so that we wouldn't be approving it at this stage, because that could be subject to change depending on the species if that gets modified through the process. So at the point where it's fully endorsed, that's when we'd be verifying the species and the root systems, and all the particular details, and referring it internally to our technical officers for comment.
Okay. So we don't actually know whether they can even be put in there.
There would be various species that require different amounts of space, and depending on the combination, you might be able to accommodate many small trees or a smaller quantum but of medium trees, depending on the available space.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're talking about really larger trees, not smaller trees or medium, because we're talking about, tree cover, urban canopy. Anyway, okay. What I want to ask though is, right, okay, so we don't know. With the condition, that is sufficient then to get
Councillor
some.
Catalano, maybe I'll ask a question of staff that might clarify it.
No, can I answer it now? No, can I ask my question? I've got a question I want to ask.
Yes.
So the question I want to ask Rebecca, if you don't mind, is do the condition, I think it's condition 17, will that be enough to get urban tree cover on the site? Urban tree canopy on the site, some canopy on the site.
Yes, so before the building permit would be issued, a revised detailed landscape plan would be submitted and we would assess that to ensure that the canopy is sufficient for that purpose.
Oh, okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's right.
I've just got to follow up on that question. I don't know whether the applicants are asking for it to be removed. I presume on the basis that some of those species might be a little bit large and have impact on adjoining spaces. For example, some of the larger trees that may shed branches or may shed the nuts from the trees, if they're placed close to car parking bays, for example, and they drop onto cars, they expose you to some sort of action from car owners. So the staff, I presume if you're looking at larger trees, you'll be in conjunction with the applicants locating the larger trees, the larger canopy trees in areas where you've got the root spaces and also less impact on adjoining spaces such as car bays. Is that correct, Rebecca?
That's correct. Those species were taken from our technical staff in line with our guidelines and they could still be incorporated within the front setback of the property where there are no car bays further to the front property boundary. So it is possible that those species could be incorporated. Whether that is moved to an advice note to guide that future landscape plan as a possibility, we would be okay with that, but it's just to provide better assistance and species that we would be looking to see in a landscape plan.
Okay, all right, well, that's something that you can negotiate. Yes, Mr.
Chair, can I ask, maybe this might short circuit some things, is if we can ask for the city's response to all of the requested amendments, and then if there's any that they don't have a problem with, maybe we don't need to deal with those. Yeah.
Okay.
Certainly, I can run down the list. So condition 4, we would have no objection to that modification for the parking.
Thank you.
Condition 13 was to respond to DRP recommendations, and how we process that and how we've done it in the past is the developer would engage a environmental consultant who might have specialty sustainability. They would prepare a report addressing those aspects in the condition. They would submit that and we would refer that to the DRP for a chair review, seeing as it was their recommendation, to make sure that those aspects have been addressed as if it were addressed up front prior to determination. So that's how we would process that.
So can I just jump in there? Was there a sustainability expert or an environmental consultant on the DRP panel when they were looking at this?
Yes, that would be Brett Woodgush.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, and is there a council policy to require on development applications?
No, not to mandate that.
There's a state planning policy.
There is a state planning policy. Sorry, our lights time out. There is a state planning policy, but not a city.
Okay. Is there a pro forma that they can follow reasonably easy?
Not dictated by the city, but when we get reports in by specialists, we generally go through to make sure it makes sense. And so the SPP would outline a format.
And does it, the SPP specifically talk about types of buildings requiring sustainability policies, or all of them? Because it's not consistently applied through local government.
So all of them, I understand.
Right, okay, thanks.
So condition 4, Jared correctly said that is a standard wording, 14, sorry, standard wording. But would have no objection to that simply talking about 1 and 2.
Thank you.
16 was put on there deliberately because the bushfire management plan identified this development as not being a high-risk land use. And when an application is a high-risk land use, it requires a risk management plan. So this application, as proposed, is not a high-risk land use. It did not have a risk management plan. There was no joint endorsement of such a document on the basis of it not being a high-risk land use. And because storage is a P land use, it would not in itself trigger another DA. So the only way to ensure that compliance with the bushfire requirements in our minds was to impose that condition that no hazardous material be permitted on the premises. If that requires further clarification, we can consider that in terms of the quantity of material, hazardous substance. I wouldn't have that detail right now though.
Just in relation to that, so that just says they can't have any hazardous material. Are you saying if they do a risk management plan or an evacuation plan, then they can have it?
It would require the management plan to be jointly endorsed or reviewed by DFES at the very least, and talk about how that will be managed.
So would it help that, because now it just says they can't have it, irrespective of whether they do a plan or not. So maybe, does it need to be clarified a bit, that condition, so that if they do satisfy DFES or whatever they need to do, then they can store hazardous material there?
Potentially, it was put on to link back and relate to this application as proposed.
Sorry, did you say this is not a high risk area?
No, the proposal as submitted in the bushfire management plan did not tick the box high risk land use.
I mean, the applicants have given some examples of hazardous materials. I mean, this would capture a lot of things that could be considered hazardous. Is there some other way of maybe as an advice note putting it?
Advice note B already does do this.
Yes.
And I believe we do have an advice note already. Advice note E, where they talk about if they want to store hazardous materials or high-risk uses, they have to provide certain things.
Yes.
If they become high risk.
And that wasn't considered to be a condition because it wouldn't be relevant to what they're actually proposing at this point in time. They haven't put forward that any of the tenancies would be storing quantities of any form of hazardous materials, fuels.
So if they wanted to, the way it's written now, they would have to make a Form 2 application, probably at least, to be able to store some whatever hazardous materials they might want to. There's no scope within that condition for that to be dealt with other than via a new planning application, as far as I can see. Is that your intention? When it's really defects we're talking about, we're not talking about the planning.
It was a bit of a
itself.
Yeah, so the land use wouldn't require an amended DA if it still fell into storage land use if it wasn't a change of use. But there's nothing ever prohibiting someone to update a bushfire management plan or prepare technical documents to support a business operation, and amending and reviewing bushfire management plans through the life of a development in any event. So whether or not that would come in as an amended DA to remove that condition, to allow for that to happen, it would probably be more an amended DA than a new DA.
This is the sessional member here, Nima Premji. The hazardous material not permitted on premises is very unrealistic because there's hazard materials everywhere with different classifications. So with the developer putting that, building this particular warehouse and then tenanting out, it also comes under occupational health and safety for the responsible operator as well, if they have hazardous material. So it's very impractical to put something like that. It'd probably be better if we were able to provide a leeway, as the deputy presiding member is saying, that we put an advisory note that if there are to be hazardous materials, they have to go through the proper process of getting the right approvals and ensuring that it is in consultation with DFES and so forth. That would be a better approach than putting a blanket no on something that could compromise the viability of the warehouse. Yeah. Because we even have hazardous materials in a house.
Yeah, the city would be open to that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Rebecca, if you'd like to move on to condition 17.
Sorry. So we've talked about that condition in terms of the species. I don't have too much more to add on that.
No, I'm not. I know that at one stage there was these conditions regarding species were put on, and some of the councillors were against those particular. I think the marri tree, because of the nuts that they do drop. So unless there's.
Can I interject? I was a councillor that was in support of marries. So there's some councillors that are against, but there's some councillors in support of marries. So that's not a blanket statement. Sorry.
No, I didn't say all councillors.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Some councillors were, and I was about to finish by saying that the council staff did say that they would take into account the location of those trees on site so that they didn't present a problem for pedestrians or vehicles or something like that.
And that somewhat segues into condition 18. That may possibly be a formatting error. That first sentence normally is the final line of what is condition 17.
Okay.
So that essentially ensures or seeks to ensure that the selected species canopy clearance won't affect the parking of vehicles, the root system won't cause damage to footpaths and hard surfaces, that there's any leaf drops or won't affect the drainage system or tree
Okay,
drops.
thank you. Yes.
Further to that, so the policy, does that specifically identify those trees those species that are identified in or mentioned in 17B?
So that's come from the City of Swan's tree planting guidelines from our technical staff.
Okay. So it's just, I don't suppose you can answer it, but it's not usual that we see conditions that specify particular species. Presumably this plan has been prepared by a landscape architect who sort of hopefully knows what they're doing.
But as mentioned before, if that section gets moved to advice note, we wouldn't have any objection to that.
Okay,
Covered off in condition 18 then.
okay. And if you move on to 21 and 22.
19 was imposed as it was taken from the main roads recommendation. And 21 and 22 were to reflect special use, restricted use 13 conditions. That's just the background of those.
So 19 has to be complied with under other legislation anyway, doesn't it?
If that was to be an advice note, I would recommend just confirming with main roads that they were happy for that to be moved.
Okay. And 21 and 22. Okay.
I think she mentioned that.
Yeah, sorry, those were to reflect restricted use 13 conditions in Spain.
All right, is that all?
Yes, from us.
Okay.
Can I ask one other question, please, of the staff? I just wanted, the Rebecca, please. Can you just confirm that the green space is 15%?
Bring up the plans.
Please.
15.7% of
Thank
the
you.
site.
What's
All
the
right,
minimum required?
10%.
Sorry?
10.
Okay. Just to clarify that, thank you.
Right, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions of the council staff? Yes, Nima?
I've got two questions, Rebecca. First is going to condition number 7. You've asked for refused bin areas adequate to service, which is fine. I just wanted to ask, were you looking for a waste management plan, or were you just in particular interested in that aspect of it?
No, this condition is just to show the location. We've got another standard condition for waste management plans.
Okay. All right. The next one I wanted to ask was, on page 18 of our report, it stipulates, and it's seen from the diagram, the signage has not been put on it, which is fine. And you've said as such standard signage condition is recommended to address any future concerns. I couldn't see a signage condition. Do you require one to a separate development application, or I've just missed it somewhere?
We've recommended conditions 11 and 12 in relation to signage,
Let's have a look.
which is more to do with the finer details of illumination, and then stock standard bunting not permitted. So there was no concern. We do understand that industrial signage is quite large in nature, so the panels that were shown on the plans.
Okay, so you are satisfied those two conditions will meet your requirements?
Yeah.
Thank you, that's all I had, presiding member.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, we have before us an application for approval in order that we may go into and discuss the item. Can I have a mover and seconder for the item, please? Mover.
I'm happy to second.
Seconded, Mr. Birch. Nina, would you like to speak to the item, please?
Some of the changes to the conditions, we do that in the second.
No, you can do that now, so with the agreement. You can speak to the item itself and then move the changes as required.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. It has been comprehensive and to the city officers. As far as the report is presented, it is within the permitted use, and the documentation provided does comply with the requirements the city had initially put out. And also I would like to thank the developers for taking on the comments by the design review panel and to address that. On that account, there has been conditions or some proposals put forward by the developer for amendment, and with the discussion in hand that we've had so far, I would like to propose some
changes. All right, just mention them. Starting with condition 4.
Condition 4 to be put forward as the proposed modification of our parking of passenger or commuter vehicles zoning permitted within the 122 designated bays and is not to occur elsewhere on site or within the adjacent road verge.
Okay, that's one. And that, I'm presuming that, okay, we are moving those, okay.
Condition 13 to stay as per the condition 13 in the report. Condition 14, happy to put forward that all requirements outlined to be deleted and put forward implementation measures 1 and 2 within section 6.
Okay.
Condition 16, I think it needs to be reworded such that any hazardous materials that are to be stored on the premises, the applicant has to provide a risk management plan and an updated bush management plan in consultation with DFES to the satisfaction of the City of Swan officers. They should be probably put as an advisory note, I think.
Okay, so perhaps you're suggesting that it go to an advisory note.
Yeah.
And that
Conditions
the wording, perhaps we know hazardous materials permitted to be stored at the premises.
to be deleted.
Unless, yeah, that's to be deleted, and maybe the wording, if the occupants wish to store hazardous material on the premises, then applications are to be made to relevant authorities
Okay, that will suffice.
for approval. Okay, well let's leave that wording. And the others?
Condition 17, B to be put as a advisory note for the applicant to consider. And in condition 8.
Can I just add in there that trees and shrub species selected may include, the word may, if you're happy to include that.
For condition 17 and 18, it looks like some of the more of a error where condition 18, it is true, the first sentence doesn't make.
That's supposed to be the end of condition 17.
So I think that sentence needs to go to
just move it up as an admin.
Yeah, admin thing to
typo.
condition 17. And
Okay.
delete it from condition 18.
Then the next one.
Condition 19, I concur that the restricted access vehicle should be put as an advisory note because it is also covered by the advisory note letters F and G.
Okay.
And I do concur that condition 21 be deleted. However, condition 22 to remain.
Okay, Mr. Birch as the seconder. Agree with all of those?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I'm against.
I'm wondering,
We haven't got to the vote yet, councillor Catalano.
I'm wondering if condition 17, 18, maybe I agree with what's proposed, but maybe if we deal with that separately, it
Okay, yep.
might help. If you agree, Naima, because it sounds like there might be some people want to have.
Okay, so
So that's the landscaping
yes, the condition.
one. I think the other ones are probably okay. Unless,
Yes, okay, I'll just foreshadow the condition 22. This isn't a sewage sensitive area and a secondary wastewater treatment. As long as they comply with the government sewage policy, which they are, I don't think they need to undertake a winter site and soil investigation. It's another composition on it that may not be required. If it is required, it will be captured under the government sewage policy. So you wish to delete that condition as well, Mr. Birch?
yes, can I just maybe clarify
Or do you want to keep that one separately as
well,
well?
maybe if I can just clarify with the city that that's something that in any event they need to satisfy. You mentioned RU 13 restricted use.
Yes, so, yeah, so that's one of the restricted use conditions. But also my understanding is that Department of Health will require.
Yeah, so it's covered. Yes, I'm happy to.
Okay. All right, well, Mima, you've moved a number of things which I'll summarise if it's okay. The mover and seconder have agreed that condition 4 can be changed in line with the applicant's requirement so that the wording 110 staff members and 11 visitors are permitted on site at any one time is deleted, and the required wording is listed there. Condition 13, that will remain. Condition 14, the words all requirements outlined to be deleted, and implementation measures 1 and 2 within section 6 will be included in that. Condition 16 is to be an advice note that would state, in the event that the occupants wish to store hazardous materials on site, then that will be the subject of further applications in accordance with the requirements of all relevant authorities. You happy with those words? Okay. And condition 18, well, that's just a typo, sorry. Condition 19 to be an advice note, and conditions 21 and 22 to be deleted. So you're moving those, the seconder is agreeing with those. Is there any discussion on those conditions? Councillor Catalano?
Yeah, so what have you done with condition 17 and your summary there?
Well, we haven't done that yet.
Oh, you're doing that separately. Oh, okay.
That is a separate one, yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So
Sorry, what are you going to do with 18? You're going to do 18 as?
Just move it up.
18 is really just a typo, so that the wording in 18
Sorry, I've lost you.
slips to the end of it at this point. We'll move that as a separate item.
So does 18 go on to 17? Sorry, I lost you there for a minute. Sorry, I lost you there for a minute.
Well, condition 7.
18 goes on to
so
17?
the wording, the first sentence in 18 is actually the last sentence in 17. It was a typo.
Yes.
So we'll debate or discuss condition 17 in the fullness. So 18 stays the same without that first sentence. Okay. Okay, so everyone happy with that? Move and seconder? Okay. All right, well,
I'm happy to go.
okay. Mr. Birch, you want to speak to the item?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, just to say that, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward application. Part of the confusion is something that's always concerned me, is that we have government agencies, authorities that have, quite rightly, responsibilities for, you know, for example, main roads, DFS, DWA, and they try and load conditions into the planning process, and really it's not clearly set up for that, and it does create this confusion where this application probably should have been pretty straightforward to deal with. I mean, it's a P-use, it's exactly what the planning for the area is intended for, and it's pretty much fully compliant. So I just wanted to make that comment, but yes, I support the recommendation with the amendments, and if I can, I'll move an amendment to condition 17. We don't need to, we can bundle in the shift of 18 to 17 if we need to, or I'm looking at you, Zoe, can we just deal with that as a sort of administrative change? So we'll just deal with, with 17. And yeah, I think that should be an advice note, unless the council's policy specifies particular species as being required, then I don't see how that's sustainable. I think we leave it up to the those qualified and those who prepare the plans to acknowledge the council policy, and then the administration to assess the plan in terms of their policy. It's not open to personal preference or anything like that. It's to assess, that's the planning system, is to assess it against the policy. And my understanding is that with that condition B, that's not essential to the, or not required to comply with the council's policy. It's but as an advice, it's quite appropriate, and it does acknowledge that there are certain situations where it's acceptable and where it may, and others where it may not be. So I think that's appropriate to be moved to an advice note, and as an advice, it can't be mandatory. So yeah, changing the word shall to may, and hopefully there'll be some agreeable solution between the applicants and the city there.
Okay, so you're moving an amendment to condition 17.
Yes, to
such that item B becomes an advice note, and the wording shall be substituted with may. Do we have a seconder for that? Nima? Yes. I'll put this one forward as a separate vote at this stage.
Well, I'm obviously against that.
Excuse me, councillor, I will ask for anyone else to speak. Anyone
Yes,
against?
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm against it. And it's not a matter of personal preference. It's well established that we have an environment and an amenity to protect. And it just doesn't include cars. I mean, it includes, biodiversity and looking after, habitat and providing forage trees so that future generations have an environment that they can live in. And this is not my preference. This is the reality that we are facing. And I constantly have to say that on this panel. I don't understand. We've got a crisis in terms of our urban tree canopy cover. It's an absolute crisis. And we're still talking about, how we're going to manage honky nuts on cars. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been down to Gosnells, but there's plenty of really very, very old marri trees down there that the community coexists with and that provides habitat and foraging trees. So, we're talking about Hazelmere now that has been completely denuded of vegetation. It was once a corridor for, Carnaby cockatoos. I mean, rare and endangered species that actually are on their way out, in fact, the way we're going. I'm sorry I have to speak in these terms, but these are facts. These are not my personal preference. And just read the EPBC Act and the requirements of us. We've had it good through our lives. We've got to provide for the future. Hazelmere is completely denuded of trees because everything's been bowled over for these warehouses. So what happens now is we have to start putting something back. And it's not good enough to say, hopefully, the developer will put in trees. No, because why would they? Because they're going to be saying things like, well, we
Councillor,
can't.
rather than preempting what the developer will say, I think we all agree that with your sentiments, I think the issue is stipulating particular types of trees in conditions. If the council has a policy on the types of trees it wants to include, it should marry that up with their policy and stipulate in the policy that they look at those Corumbia calophylla and Eucalyptus torquata and any other trees. We're stipulating particular trees that they use when there may be many other species that can do the same thing that you're asking for, but in effect we're prescribing the trees.
Can I interject though?
Because no, you cannot. Thank you, councillor. I haven't finished, and I think that we agree with your sentiments, whether they're marri trees or carry trees or whatever sort of trees. I think that what Mr. Birch is saying, and I agree with, is that we shouldn't be prescribing the types of vegetation in a planning commission. If the council wants to stipulate, and if the State Planning Commission wants to stipulate, there is an urban canopy policy that the WA Planning Commission has adopted, and we'll be addressing these sorts of issues so that all local authorities have a standard responsibility for Carnaby's black cockatoo and any other species of fauna as well. So the issue is, rather than stipulating, the advice note will be, yes, you look at these sorts of things, but we won't be stipulating particular trees and so forth, but we are putting it in the advice note that they consider those, and the council staff, at the direction of councillors, if they want to change the policy, will comply. Okay, so that's...
Well, I do have something to add to that, and there was an accuracy in what you were saying, and that
probably
is...
Probably several. I'm not...
Well, I just want to point out just one. And
Yes.
that is that the marri tree is the foraging tree. There are no other trees.
Well, aren't Banksia,
Advantaceous.
Banksias?
Yes, Banksias, but
Well,
Banksias aren't going to be planted.
Then maybe I wasn't incorrect. So rather than debate the virtues of different types of vegetation, the point is we shouldn't be stipulating Mr. Birch is saying that. So I was just trying to clarify that with you.
Chair, I'd like to the motion to be put and just to close the debate.
Okay.
The key point is here is it's not for this panel to be creating policy. We are to assess an application in relation to the relevant regulations. Totally understand what the elected member is saying in relation to canopy. Yes, I'm not suggesting that, but I neither have the expertise nor the authority on this panel to be putting forward policy which has been suggested. That is for the council, that is for other authorities to do that. We have no authority to do that, and that's why I don't believe that condition is sustainable. Well, maybe sustainable is not a good word there, but I don't think it would stand up to inspection. So
okay,
that's all I'm saying.
All right. So you've closed debate on the amendment. All those in favour to delete Part B and renumber the others sequentially, and make Part B an advice note with the word shall being replaced with may. Can I have a vote on that, please? All in favour? Against? Okay, 3-2. Thank you very much. That amendment is made. Okay, so they're the only other items that we're looking at debating individually. All right, well, we've gone through and now can I have councillors to, well, we've had you've moved, you've spoken, you've seconded, you've spoken. Is anyone against the proposed resolution to approve this application as amended?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you wish to elaborate on that, Councillor Catalano?
No, thank you. No, I think I made it clear the problem with that.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Councillor Knight, do you wish to speak?
Nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do you wish to close debate on the item?
Yeah, thank you, presiding member. First of all, thank you to the developers and the officers for their diligent work. I understand it's quite frustrating with the referrals from Main Road, Department of Health, DEWA, and trying to get that all into the conditions and advice notes, in the correct manner, as stipulated by the deputy presiding member. With the debates that we've had so far, it has been good to see that the developer did look at the design review panel's comments and went back and revised their development. So thank you for that. And for the officers for doing a diligent work in trying to capture all the various relevant authorities, conditions and advice notes. So on that account, I take into account all of that in the debate. I hereby support the recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, well, I will just close debate on it by saying I too support the recommendation. So I'll put the recommendation for the approval with the amendments that we have discussed and moved and voted on as far as condition 17 goes. All those in favour? Against? That's 3-2. Thank you very much. Thank you, presenters and council staff on that one. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.1 on the agenda now. This is a reconsideration for a childcare centre, proposed childcare premises at lot 1, number 9, Waterhall Road, South Guildford. We do have two presenters, and I've agreed to allow them up to 5 minutes to make their presentations. Their joint present. Oh, Mr. Teo, sorry, come on. Please make your presentation. Just got a technical issue that we're looking at the moment.
Good morning, panel members and
Yes, it's still morning.
officers of the city. It is morning still. I'm Neil Teo from Dynamic Planning, joined by Scott Lambie from PTG Consulting. Scott's been the traffic engineer on this project since we started. We're talking about number 9 Waterhall Road, which is a proposed childcare centre at the Waterhall Shopping Centre. The responsible authority recommendation from the council is to refuse it for the second time.
Sorry, no, it's okay.
I do
Get loud.
I do like to point out that the officers of the city have recommended approval again for the second time as well. We are here under a Section 31 reconsideration, and I think just to really crystallise the key issues that during the debate of the last DAP meeting, this was refused. There was some commentary that a survey that we did in July last year had some concerns with it, as the cafe that was on site was not operating, and also that there was possibly some missing data because the Rose Hill estate subdivision had still had some further lots to create. So we did a survey in December last year, and all these surveys they've done during normal hours, not during school holidays. There's nothing affecting surveys as such. And we've taken into account the population that could arrive from Roseville Waters in the future. The cafe was operating in the December survey as well. In short, with the parking bays that exist on both surveys, the parking use is 40%. If we take away the parking that will be removed once the childcare is there, if it were to be approved, we're at 60% occupancy. So there is a lot of capacity in effect for this childcare to be on site and to cater for the demand of the existing shopping centre. This is a very, I guess, unique part of South Guildford where you don't really come into this area of South Guildford unless you live there or you're visiting people. You know, you're basically drawn by the magnet of Midland Gate, the regional centre, in terms of major shopping facilities. But this really is a quiet neighbourhood centre, and that's reflected in the actual usage of the parking that exists. And that's why we are strongly arguing that there is capacity for this childcare to operate on this site without affecting the actual parking demand for the shopping centre. I won't bore you with too much of that data. I will say that at the May council meeting this year, and the briefing session where council considered it, you know, the reasons for the refusal relate to insufficient parking for both the existing shopping centre and proposed childcare premises, and that the applicant has not addressed the shortfall of parking. You know, after 2 surveys, updated and revised GIS, there was no debate or interrogation at the the briefing session from all the council meeting of that additional data. So it is frustrating from an applicant's point of view that we've done all the work. The expert officers of the city have looked at that work, have recommended approval, and at the briefing session and the council meeting, there was no discussion to that effect. Let you speak, stop on the traffic findings.
No worries. Look, to provide some context of the site at which the proposed childcare is proposed, Waterhall Shopping Centre is a small local centre that provides limited shopping services, meaning that the surrounding residential catchment would need to shop elsewhere for many of their shopping needs, such as large department stores, big chain supermarkets, hardware, specialty stores, etc. Several other large shopping centres and newly built supermarkets exist beyond the localised catchment that would significantly diminish the likelihood of the customer catchment increasing in size going forward. Further to this, the large chain supermarkets over the last few years have been offering enhanced services such as direct-to-boot or home delivery services, which would dilute the demand from the local Waterhall IGA within the surrounding residential catchment. The surrounding catchment is small in area, population, and physically quite constrained. Significant natural and man-made barriers surround the area, such as the Great Eastern Highway bypass to the south, Roe Highway to the east, Helena River to the north, and Swan River to the west, all present as barriers to visitors to the centre from residential areas beyond the direct surrounding catchment, which limits the ability to attract more out-of-area customers to the Waterhall Centre. In actual fact, there's been 3 separate parking surveys undertaken as part of the transport assessment for this proposed development. The first one was a 1 weekday and a Saturday survey, and then the advice from the city officers. 2 full week surveys have subsequently been done, with the most recent one in December 2023. Each of the surveys demonstrated that the existing centre car park provides significant excess capacity over and above the parking demand for the site. Even once the proposed childcare development is built, there would be ample parking capacity available. Peak weekday parking demand during the last survey was 50 bays within a Saturday peak and 50 bays within a weekday peak and 52 bays in a Saturday peak, with both of these peaks occurring at midday. Assuming a maximum occupancy of 15 bays used by the childcare, which is highly unlikely at a midday period, 65 bays occupied would be the worst case scenario, leaving 23 bays still free from the remaining total of 88 bays post-development. The town planning scheme parking calculations that indicate an on-paper shortfall are based on the assessment of each different use in isolation. In reality, visitors to the shopping centre will often visit more than one establishment during the same trip, reducing the real-life parking demand, which is clearly reflected in the results of the parking surveys. The peak parking demand for the childcare in the AM does not coincide with the peak of the shopping centre, and as such would have no impact at all on parking demand. During the PM peak, the survey demonstrated that even in the worst case scenario, significant capacity is available. Town planning scheme calculations also assume no cross-visitation between the existing retail and the proposed childcare development. However, it was highly likely that parents picking up their child or children from the centre would also take the opportunity to shop at the centre, essentially reducing the overall parking demand further due to the parking use reciprocity.
Your time's up, but just wrap it up. Thank you. Just you can summarise.
The Ridge Hill or Rose Hill is fairly important, so if you don't mind me just mentioning that bit.
The subdivision.
So with regard to the future growth within the local catchment, the only likely source is Rose Hill Water's residential subdivision to the southwest of the site, which was raised at the previous JDAP meeting. Analysis of the structure plan area shows that there is up to 111 undeveloped lots in its entirety yet to be built out. Based on typical residential trip generation splits, the TIA analysis calculated that these additional dwellings would increase residential shopping related trips from the Rose Hill subdivision by 234 trips per day. If a generous estimate of 20% of these trips were assumed to travel to the Waterhall shopping centre, These additional dwellings would increase the total additional trips to the site by 47 trips, or on average 4 trips per hour over a 12-hour shop opening period. These additional Rosehill Estate trips of 4 per hour, which is 2 to the site and 2 from the site, would have a negligible impact on the performance of the surrounding road network, or more importantly, the availability of parking at the site, given that they would only increase parking demand by around 2 bays per hour, leaving 21 bays available at the centre during its busiest parking demand period.
Okay, thank you for that. Panel members, anyone have questions of the presenters?
Yes, I do.
Councillor Catalano.
Okay. I just wanted to go back to your survey in December. Now, the current car park has 120 bays, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And 40% of the car park that means there was 54 cars in the car park?
Oh, that's better. 50 at the peak, 50 cars during the weekday peak, and 52 cars during the Saturday peak.
Okay, that's the December survey, yeah. And then you say 60% of parking after development. So 60% of what?
Well, of the car park was essentially unoccupied.
Oh, okay. So that leaves, okay, 130. Oh, I see. So 100. So that was just in the December. That's all you had. You didn't have any, you hadn't extrapolated anything in terms of once all the car bays had been removed, and then it was only left with 88 car bays.
Yes, once 88 were removed, but essentially there would, if you assume the same peak, so 50 on a weekday, because obviously the childcare doesn't operate on a weekend. So
no, 50, but you would
50 bays on a weekend, and then we assume 15 bays as the maximum usage from the childcare. There would be 23 bays left available, unoccupied within the shopping centre once the bays have been removed.
Hang on a minute. So you're saying there was 54 car bays used. That's 60% of the current usage. Then if you were to add 15 car bays for the childcare centre, that means that you need a capacity of 69 car bays, and you're only proposing 88. So that is not 20. That is in fact, so 9. That's 19. Yeah. So you're saying that there's a 19. Pardon?
+4, because there was only 50 bays occupied on the weekday survey at the peak, not 54.
Okay. So what you're saying then is that your survey, which was conducted in December last year, 2023, really shows that there's capacity for 19 cars.
Well, I think if I can put it this other way, we did a survey in July last year and a survey in December last year, and in round numbers, on a weekday, which is when the childcare doesn't operate on the weekends, I'll avoid that. But on the weekday, of the existing 120 bays, 53 bays were being used in July, and then 50 bays were being used in December. So
yeah, but what my question was that there's 55, let's say 55 bays are being used by shoppers, and then you've got another 15 for the childcare centre. That leaves you with 70 car bays that are needed. So that actually leaves you only 18 car bays left. Now, that's not addressing the extra development that's occurring in the area. So that was just your survey from last year, and I just wanted to confirm that's how the numbers seem to me from your survey last year.
So from the survey last year, the highest peak was 50 bays, and that occurred at midday.
Okay.
So even if we added 15 bays for the childcare, which is the peak usage, which doesn't occur at midday, the peak usage obviously occurs in the evening and in the morning, but just for robustness, if we added those 15 bays on at midday, that leaves 23 unoccupied bays once the childcare removes the additional bays, and there's only 88 bays remaining.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other panel members have questions? Mr. Birch. Councillor Knight, sorry, Dave.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I just had a question about the timing of the surveys, the parking surveys. The one survey in July is right after school holidays, after the term begins, and the second one is just before the Christmas holiday. Wouldn't it be more would have been better to do the survey for a more accurate, taking into consideration that families might be on holiday, extended holidays, would have been better to do the survey midterm. Excuse me. That's all.
I mean, obviously we can only conduct the surveys when the opportunity arises. The surveys were done over an entire week.
So I'll just jump in. How many surveys were done? 3, you said.
Well, there was one survey done initially, which was a 1 week. So we identified
what
so that was
time
a Thursday.
Of the year was that?
From memory, I think that was in February. It was February 2022, I think it was.
Okay, February.
So it was the survey was done on Thursday, which we consider that the peak
shopping
activity,
day.
and on a Saturday.
Yeah. The next one was
then
done.
the city requested a full week survey, so then that's when the second one was done. So the timing of that survey was basically in line with when the city requested that additional information, but we certainly made sure that it didn't fall within school holidays.
Was June?
July, I
July.
think it was.
So you had February, July, and then the third one was
early
December.
Early December.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Knight?
Well, as I say, I mean, February again. You're at the end of the school holiday. I'm just not convinced it's an accurate reflection of the use of when all families would be, back. All kids are back at school. That's all.
Okay.
I can comment and just say we do the surveys as per the school calendar year and avoiding the registered school holidays. I think from a planning context, the survey is accurate. I mean, anecdotally, I've been to that centre plenty of times during the middle of the day, throughout the week. It's the parking stats reveal what I see on site regularly.
Yeah, well, I've also heard anecdotally that it's pretty chockers, from residents. That's all. As I say, I thought for an accurate usage, you would do midterm when everyone is back at school. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Knight. Anyone else have questions? Yeah. Yes, Mr. Birch.
Just one of Mr. Lambie. The traffic engineer and the traffic engineering industry in general, you mentioned sort of changing shopping habits like online shopping and collection or home delivery. Has the industry done anything about trying to identify how that has affected? I would imagine it must have affected parking requirements, because
there's been no change industry-wide in terms of parking requirements for sort of shopping centre, supermarket, retail to take into that account. But it has made a huge difference.
Yeah, but it hasn't been quantified.
No. I mean, my anecdotally, my wife, I don't think she's been in a supermarket since 2019. She just does click and collect, boot, or gets home delivery now.
Thank you.
I just got a question. The childcare centre has been established for primarily local children.
Yes, absolutely. It's only for 53 spaces, child spaces.
3 spaces, so
which
it's not a
is
large one. It's not
not
likely to go for a larger catchment.
No.
So secondly, if it's a local based centre, one would assume that the parents coming and going are local parents who would be probably taking the opportunity to do a shopping trip at the same time.
Absolutely. This centre is really designed and purpose built around this community.
Yeah.
And it's been put on this site because the retailers need more traffic to it, and also it makes sense because there's a cross pollination of the childcare and retail traffic.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Mr. Birch, a
Have you-
supplementary question?
Have you got an operator?
Yes, we do. It's a local operator, as in a WA family-based
An
operator.
experienced operator?
Experienced operator. They've got about 3 centres.
So they would deal with access
Yes,
for the centres that they are. They'd be familiar with
that's right.
the habits, if you like, of. I imagine you said it's local too. I imagine there might be some people who would be able to walk to the.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the centre is owned by an individual, Mr. Kim Soo, and nothing is stranded off to anyone else. And he will still own the childcare centre as well and lease it to a local operator on a 10+5 lease. But the intent is we actually really see this centre being and when the weather's good, there actually is a true likelihood of people just walking their kids to this centre.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, do any of the panel members wish to raise any queries with the council staff? No? Okay, all right. Well, we have a recommendation before us, which is for a refusal. It's a recommendation from the council. So we'll have a move and a second for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to move that.
For refusal.
Sorry, no.
No, we have before us a
Did we do? My apologies.
recommendation.
My apologies.
For refusal. Do I have a mover and second for that? Moved Councillor Catalano. Seconded Councillor Knight. Councillor Catalano, you wish to speak to the item, please?
Yes. This neighbourhood is extremely car dependent. There is virtually no public transport in the area at all. It's very intensely built up. The roads are quite narrow, and there is absolutely no on-street parking anywhere. From my figures, this would only leave, if that childcare centre was built, that would only leave 20 car bays there for what is effectively still a growing neighbourhood. And the report, I believe, says that they're predicting 47 extra trips from the new development alone, which isn't captured in either of the surveys or any of the surveys that they've conducted, because obviously the people aren't actually living there. I think it's something like 300 people. So 19 bays in surplus on a good day, if you're lucky, 47 extra trips with the new development. to assume that everybody who's going to use a childcare centre is a local and they're going to walk there, I mean, that is not in the realms of the real world. This is a very car-dependent neighbourhood. People get in their cars and they drive to the childcare centre. It's a very hot climate. We can't take the children out in the heat. Parents are in a hurry and they get in the car, they go down there, they drop the kids off. They don't spend time doing shopping in the morning, and then they go down there and they drop the kids off, pick the kids up in the afternoon. Shopping is a separate activity to dropping kids off and picking them up. And as we know, we can't just, sidle up to the shopping centre and let our kids out in the middle of the street. We do have to actually park the car up, and the children have to be carried out, if they're young children, out of their seat and carried into the centre. And it is a parking bay that needs to be made available for at least 10 minutes. And there's, if you're not careful, there's a queue of people waiting to get in. Meanwhile, there's a shopping centre a clientele also wanting to get in. There's no on-street parking, and we've got what will happen is that the city is going to end up, if this childcare centre is built and there is this incredible shortfall of parking, we as a city are going to be able to do absolutely nothing about the ensuing parking issues that will arise. We will be able to do nothing, and they will be a reality. Make no doubt about that. People are not going to change their habits. They are in a hurry. They're going to drive there. They're going to drop the children off. They're not going to combine it with a leisurely shopping centre trip. It doesn't happen. It's not like that in the real world. It's this childcare centre needs to be in another location, and the car bays need to be retained for the shopping centre. Otherwise, it's going to be effectively mayhem in this area in terms of trying to find parking, drive around the shopping centre, access it and get out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the item? Councillor Knight has seconded. You wish to speak?
No, I don't really have much. Right? I fully concur with Councillor Catalano. Yeah, I mean, this is so unsuitable. We surely, childcare centres can be put just about anywhere, and I don't know why we would be looking to take, all these parking spaces from this business. I mean, it doesn't strike me as a good idea at all. I mean, what about the businesses in the shopping centre? Will they be suffering because of this? So if people decide, they can't get a park, they'll go somewhere else. So no, I think we should be refusing this one and asking, the proprietor to find somewhere else to locate the childcare premises. So yeah, really, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Any other members wish to speak for the motion or against?
Speak against.
Okay, Mr. Birch.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm speaking against the refusal. I think it's been thoroughly demonstrated that in this case, the childcare centre can be accommodated. I'd just like to make a couple of points. Firstly, as the transport planner has indicated, is the Rosehill development. That's going to introduce 47 vehicles per day, not per hour or not during the peak hour, but per day. So that's an average of 4 and a bit. And even if that's not the same number, it's going to be a small number that's going to add to the centre. We're really talking, when we're talking numbers, and it's midweek, it's I think 23 vacant bays, not 19. Is that right?
That's correct.
19's a Saturday.
Assuming the reduced car park size.
Yeah. So, but anyway, 23-19, there's not a lot of difference.
Sorry, there are in fact, I think from memory.
We can't.
No, I was just going to say there are on-street parking bays
Okay.
that were excluded from the survey because they're in the
All right.
public domain.
Thank you.
But in any event, that's during the peak period, during the middle of the day, when the childcare centre will be. There won't be pickup and delivery, so those bays won't, or not all 15 bays will be required for the childcare centre. Yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable that all of the research and work has been done to illustrate that this centre can operate with the childcare centre there and the amount of parking provided.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. Yes.
Yeah, I would also like to speak against the motion. I'm very happy with the traffic impact assessment that has been presented today. The concern that I recall, Charles, on the first step was with respect to the Rose Hill subdivision, which you have addressed in this particular assessment. And given the mathematics of it, it all fits in. So I'm completely speak against the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I too will speak against the motion to refuse. This, I think, firstly on parking grounds, I think the 3 surveys that have been undertaken have demonstrated clearly that the centre is underutilised. The surveys were undertaken in February, late February, in July and early December. Nowhere near, well, pretty much outside of school holiday periods. So I think the patterns of travel would have settled down certainly by the end of February from the school holidays. And if we start moving it around at other times, we'll probably get into Easter and other times as well that might be affected by holidays, etc. There are on-street bays available. I've seen them. I've been to the site and I've noticed there are on-street bays. They weren't even factored into this application, and it demonstrates that any overflow parking for the centre itself, if it ever got full, would spill out onto the streets, into the on-street bays that are available. We often get criticised as panels for approving childcare centres in residential areas. People tend not to like them adjacent to houses or residential properties, yet the policies still allowed. And here's an example of a centre that is co-located with a commercial development, not abutting residential developments. And it's in the co-location, I disagree with Councillor Catalano that people drive to a childcare centre, and if there's shops available next door, they just get in the car and drive away. They do shop if there's a shop nearby and they've got to pick up a little bit of shopping for the evening or morning meal, etc. They might stop and have a coffee. Not everybody rushes off to work. Some people drop kids off and have a little bit of spare time available to utilise the local shopping facilities. In this regard, the council staff have assessed the parking requirements, the parking surveys, and are fully supportive of the results, which show that the centre is appropriately co-located and shared parking is an appropriate issue. So to that extent, I'll be supporting the alternate recommendation and not supporting this particular recommendation to refuse. That being said, Councillor Catalano, you have the right to close debate on the item.
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Catalano. All right, well, I'll put the item to refuse the application to a vote. All those in favour? 2 against, 3. Okay, so we do have an alternate recommendation to approve, which is in the responsible authority report. Do I have a mover for that? Moved, Mr. Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have another try in the proper order this time.
That's all right, thank you.
Could I ask a question? Which alternative are we talking? Alternate motion are we talking about now? Because we got the one.
The officer's recommendation.
Yeah,
the officer's recommendation.
With that preamble, with the preamble that was requested in the R13. I don't have it written down here, but
sorry, I'm just a bit confused now because we did get sent an alternate.
Well, that was with the wording that if it was going to get approved, or the alternate recommendation was to refuse, but with the more appropriate wording to refuse.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're sorry, I have to be clear because it's quite complicated. It's not clear to me. So what you're wanting to go ahead was to approve the childcare centre, yes, not refuse, not the alternate to refuse, no, with the other planning grounds.
As I said, my apologies. Well, the alternate recommendation I'm putting forward is the one which the officer's recommendation to approve. To approve. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
With that preamble.
That's right.
What preamble was that? Sorry.
That was in the section 31, section R13 request, which basically.
Sorry.
Yes.
Just to clear up, it wasn't in the R13 request. This preamble was already provided by the city's officers.
This is this one here.
Is there any chance? Is it a lot of words, or can you just read it out, please?
That the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel, pursuant to Section 31 of the State Administrative Tribunal Act 2004, in respect of the State Administrative Application DR 169 of 2023, resolved to reconsider its decision of the 26th of October 2023. And set aside the decision and substitute set aside the decision to refuse in October 2023 and substitute a new decision for the application.
To approve.
To approve.
That's why I thought it was the. That's the officer's recommendation. Yes. But it doesn't say to approve.
It doesn't say to approve.
I thought that was the preamble.
Should have the wording.
Wasn't that the
substitute a new decision for DAP application reference such and such and accompanying plans and approve in accordance with clause 68 of Schedule 2 deemed provisions of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations and the provisions of clause 10.3 of the City of Swan scheme, subject to the following conditions. So effectively the reconsideration is to approve the application subject to conditions.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm opposed, thank you.
Well, we haven't got to that yet. Mr. Birch, you're moving that?
Yeah, I don't think I've got any more to say on it. I'm comfortable with the analysis of this, and obviously no one's disagreeing with the use, very essential uses today. And it was interesting your comment about in other areas there might be said in some cases that they shouldn't go anywhere. Well, they're essential uses, but that's not the swaying factor in this. The matter really before us is the parking, and I'm satisfied that that is appropriate and adequate in this case.
Okay, thank you. Nima is seconded. Do you wish to speak?
No, thank you. I think.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak against the item? No, no further.
One thing though,
Ilana?
so basically then the gist of the discussion today is that the survey that on the 13th of December basically has alleviated any kind of doubts that the panel had when it was last put before the panel. Is that basically the gist of the discussion here today?
Well, I think those in favour of the proposal have accepted the survey results, the 3 survey results, acknowledging that the amount of parking on site is acceptable.
Oh, right.
Both
All right.
the
Yes. Okay. Well, that's all I wanted to clear up. No, I don't have anything further to add because it is, in my view, totally inadequate. The parking.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to speak against the item? If not, I will put the item to a vote then. Mr. Birch, do you want to wrap up?
No, nothing further to add.
Okay. Well, and I'll put the item to a vote to approve the application in accordance with the alternative motion and the preamble. All those in favour? 3 against? 2. Thank you very much. Okay, the application is approved. Back to my running sheet. Okay, all right, well, moving on to the agenda. Next item is SAT application and Supreme Court appeals. They're all listed. Agenda. Item 2, general business. No general business. Then I will close the meeting at 11:24 a.m. Thank you very much, presenters, council staff, and panel members, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.